I, 30F, have been married to my husband, 30M, for almost 8 years. We have 2 kids together, and for the most part, we have what I always thought was a solid partnership. But lately, something feels off. I don't know if I'm being overly sensitive or if I should be worried, but it all started with dinner. Every evening, we typically eat dinner together as a family around 6 or 6:30. It's something I look forward to sitting down, catching up, just being together. I'm the primary cook, but if I have an appointment or get home late, my husband usually waits for me or at least makes sure there's something for me when I get back. It's an unspoken thing, part of our rhythm. But then last night happened. I asked my husband what he wanted to eat, and he said he'd just pick something up. I assumed that meant he'd get dinner for all of us, so I didn't think much of it. When he got home, he had burgers for himself and the kids. Just not for me. I thought maybe he had picked up something separate for me, but instead he asked, "Do you want me to make you a sandwich or something?" A sandwich, like an afterthought. I felt a weird pit in my stomach, but I let it go. Maybe it was just a simple miscommunication. But then tonight happened. I had a late appointment and got home around 6:15, expecting to eat dinner together. I walked in, and the kids were finishing their meals. My husband was already done. They had already eaten without me. I must have looked surprised because my husband immediately said, "Oh, I fed the kids and ate already. Did you want something?" I felt a lump rise in my throat. Did I want something? It wasn't even about the food, it was the principle of it. The assumption that I was somehow separate from the rest of them, like I wasn't part of the family dinner anymore, like I wasn't even considered. And then, the twist that made my stomach drop, as I was standing there, trying to process my feelings, my daughter, 6F, looked up and said, "Daddy said we don't have to wait for Mommy anymore." I blinked. My eyes flicked up to my husband, who suddenly looked guilty. He cleared his throat and said, "I just meant that if you're running late, we don't have to hold off dinner and make the kids wait." That pit in my stomach deepened. Was that really what he meant? Because from where I was standing, it felt like something else. Something deliberate. Something cold. So I asked him directly, "Why didn't you wait for me?" His response? A half-hearted shrug. "I thought you'd appreciate it. I took care of dinner so you didn't have to worry about it." But here's the thing. I never asked to be left out. I felt invisible. I felt like I had been slowly erased from something that had always been important to us. And then, the final blow. I opened the trash bin to throw something away and saw a takeout bag from a steakhouse we love, one he knows I love, a restaurant we haven't been to in months. A restaurant he had always claimed was too expensive when I suggested we go. My hands started shaking. I turned to him and asked, "Did you order from here?" His face changed. He tried to play it off. "Oh yeah, I grabbed something for myself earlier. I figured the kids wouldn't want steak." So he got himself a steak dinner and gave the kids fast food, and I got nothing. I felt my stomach twist into knots. Was I crazy? Was I reading too much into this? Or was something else going on? I didn't say anything else. I just grabbed some leftovers from the fridge and sat at the table alone while he went to the living room like nothing was wrong. I decided to test something. This morning, I didn't make him coffee like I usually do. He didn't say anything. I didn't text him during the day. No response from him. At dinner time, I made food just for me and the kids. He walked in, saw us eating, and looked annoyed. "Oh," he said, "you didn't make anything for me?" I just shrugged. "I figured you'd appreciate me not worrying about it." His expression darkened. But he didn't argue. He just sat down and scrolled through his phone while we ate. Something is wrong. I don't know what, but I can feel it. I looked through our bank statements. There were multiple charges from the steakhouse over the last few weeks. Lunches, dinners. And it wasn't just takeout. There were sit-down meal charges, service fees, and even tip amounts. He had been dining in. But with who? I confronted him. He went pale and stammered something about grabbing lunch with coworkers. But when I asked which coworkers, he hesitated. I haven't said anything else. I just don't know what to do. Am I overreacting, or am I finally seeing something I've been too blind to notice before? I, 29F, used to believe that love was supposed to be all-consuming. That if I wasn't constantly thinking about my partner, if I wasn't feeling the highest highs and the lowest lows, then maybe it wasn't real. I think I got that idea from watching too many dramatic love stories growing up, or maybe from my parents' marriage, which was as passionate as it was toxic. Either way, the relationships I had in my 20s reflected that belief and nearly destroyed me in the process. I was never someone who casually dated. I fell, and I fell hard. My first serious boyfriend, Ryan, 30M, was the kind of guy who knew how to keep me on edge. He was charming, spontaneous, and when we were together, it felt like we were the only two people in the world. But then he'd disappear. One day, he'd be texting me nonstop, calling me at midnight to tell me how much he adored me, and the next, I wouldn't hear from him for 3 days. I'd sit by my phone, making excuses for him, convincing myself that if I just did everything right, he would stay. The cycle was addictive. He'd come back just as I was ready to give up, pulling me back in with grand gestures, apologies, and whispered promises of a future together. And every time, I forgave him. I was convinced that what we had was special, that the pain was just proof of how deep our love ran. But over time, the waiting, the uncertainty, the mental gymnastics, it all wore me down. When he finally ended things, I shattered. I spent months obsessing over what went wrong, replaying every conversation, wondering if I could have done something differently. My self-worth had become so entangled with his attention that when it was gone, I didn't know who I was anymore. It was the darkest period of my life. You'd think I would have learned my lesson, but I fell into the same pattern with my next relationship. Different guy, same emotional whiplash. I thought I was in control this time. I had convinced myself I had leveled up in dating, that I knew what red flags to watch for. But when Matt 33M came along, he was so much more subtle than Ryan had been. He wasn't overtly avoidant, he was just bad at texting. He wasn't cruel, he was just not ready for anything serious yet. He always had an excuse, a reason why he couldn't fully commit, and I believed him every single time. After years of these relationships, I started noticing something. I wasn't myself when I was with these men. I became someone I didn't even recognize. I neglected my friends, my hobbies, and even my own needs just to keep the relationship afloat. My entire world revolved around keeping them happy, around trying to make myself more desirable, more chill, more accommodating. It was exhausting. The worst part? Every time a relationship ended, I would spiral. I wasn't just sad, I was devastated. It was like my entire identity had been built around being someone's girlfriend, and without that, I was nothing. I would cry for weeks, overanalyze every interaction, and stalk their social media for signs they had moved on before me. It was humiliating and painful, but I couldn't stop myself. Then something happened that changed everything. My best friend, Lily, sat me down after my last breakup and told me, "You're not in love with these men. You're addicted to the chase, to the drama. You're addicted to proving you're worth staying for." That hit me like a punch to the gut. Because she was right, I had spent years confusing intensity for love, mistaking anxiety for passion. That was 2 years ago. Since then, I've been single, and for the first time in my life, I feel at peace. I've reconnected with old friends, thrown myself into my career, and discovered hobbies that actually bring me joy. I don't spend my nights wondering why someone hasn't texted me back, or whether I should have been more agreeable on a date. I don't feel like I'm constantly waiting for the other shoe to drop. But now, as I approach 30, I'm starting to wonder, is it worth trying again? I want love, but I don't want to lose myself in it. I don't want to go back to feeling like my entire world hinges on someone else's affection. And if I do start dating again, what is it even supposed to feel like? Because if it's not the all-consuming obsession I used to crave, then what is it? A little background. I, 31F, was engaged to my ex, Brian, 34M, a few years ago. Our relationship was complicated, to say the least. We were together for 5 years, engaged for 1, and I spent the majority of those years questioning whether I was actually happy or just too comfortable to leave. Spoiler alert, I should have left sooner. Brian was charming, ambitious, and had a way with words, but he was also controlling in subtle ways. It wasn't the screaming in your face kind of toxicity, but the insidious kind, the kind that erodes your confidence over time. The passive-aggressive comments, the gaslighting, the way he always had to be right. But I convinced myself he loved me, that the bad moments didn't outweigh the good. Then COVID happened. Being in lockdown with someone forces you to see them in ways you never did before. The cracks in our relationship turned into gaping holes. The emotional exhaustion of constantly walking on eggshells reached a breaking point, and I finally did what I had been too afraid to do for years. I left. I packed my things, took a deep breath, and handed back the engagement ring. It was a ring we had picked out together, a beautiful, vintage-inspired diamond ring from a local jeweler. I loved that ring, not just for how it looked, but because, at the time, it symbolized hope. A future, a life I thought we were going to build together, so giving it back felt like severing the last tie, the final goodbye. Fast forward to last week. I was scrolling through Instagram minding my business when I saw his post, an engagement announcement. Brian and his new fiancée, Emily, 29F, grinning at each other, hands intertwined. But my stomach dropped when I saw it. She was wearing my ring. At first, I thought I was losing my mind. Maybe it was a similar design, but no. I had spent a year wearing that ring. I knew every curve, every detail. The tiny scratch on the side of the band where I had once dropped it in the sink, the subtle vintage millgrain edging. It was the exact same ring. I felt sick. Look, I get that engagement rings are expensive, but something about this felt wrong. Not only had he not bothered to get her a new ring, but he had repurposed the one that symbolized his commitment to me. Did she even know? Did she think he had picked it out just for her? I texted my best friend a screenshot of the post. Tell me I'm not crazy. She called me immediately, just as horrified. That's your ring. Oh my God, does she know? I had no idea. And the more I thought about it, the more I felt a twisted mix of emotions. Part of me wanted to warn her, but another part of me wondered, would it even matter? What would I say? Hey, congrats on your engagement! Fun fact, that ring was originally mine. Anyway, best of luck. I went down a rabbit hole scrolling through Emily's posts, trying to get a sense of her. She seemed sweet, genuinely happy. And I knew that if I had just gotten engaged, the last thing I'd want to hear is that my ring had been worn by my fiancé's ex for a year. But then I started thinking about Brian's pattern of behavior, how he always took the easiest, most convenient route, how he could be selfish in ways that only became clear after the fact. This wasn't just about a ring. It was about what it meant, the lack of effort, the complete disregard for starting fresh with something new, something that belonged solely to them. If he couldn't even bother to get her a ring that wasn't tied to his past, what else was he cutting corners on? I debated messaging her. I had no ill intent, but I kept thinking, if I were in her shoes, would I want to know? Then, 2 days later, something unexpected happened. I got a DM from her. Emily. She was polite but direct. Hey, I know this is random, but I saw your comment on Sarah's post and realized we have a few mutuals. I just wanted to ask, I noticed you used to be engaged to Brian. I hope this isn't weird, but can I ask you something? My heart pounded as I typed back. Of course. What's up? What she sent next made my blood run cold. Did he ever give you an engagement ring? My fingers hovered over my keyboard. Yeah, why? She responded almost immediately. Because I found an old photo of you wearing it. My stomach dropped. I didn't know how to respond. She knew. Somehow she had found a picture from years ago and put 2 and 2 together. She sent me a follow-up message before I could reply. I confronted Brian. He swore it wasn't the same ring, but when I asked for proof, he got defensive. I just needed to hear it from you. Is it the same one? I hesitated, but in the end, I decided to be honest. Yes, it's the same ring. What happened next? Well, let's just say their engagement announcement disappeared from social media within 24 hours. Brian tried calling me, but I ignored him. I wasn't about to clean up his mess. Emily hasn't posted anything since, but I hope she got out before things went further. If the ring was a reused afterthought, I can only imagine what else in their relationship was built on convenience rather than genuine love. So, yeah, if your ex ever proposes to someone new, maybe check IG. You never know what secrets might be hiding in plain sight. I never expected my life to turn into one of those late-night true crime episodes, the kind where you sit there yelling at the screen, wondering how things got so bad and why nobody did anything sooner. But here I am, telling my story, hoping someone will listen. For context, my father is an alcoholic. Not the functional kind people joke about, not the one too many beers on a Friday kind, no. He is the 6 strong mixed drinks a day kind. He is the kind who slurs through dinner time and forgets entire conversations by morning, the kind who goes from eerily calm to full-blown rage in under 60 seconds. The worst part? He has always been this way. Growing up, my mother took most of the brunt of his anger. I remember hiding under the kitchen table, hands pressed over my ears as he screamed at her, calling her every vile name imaginable. When I got older, I started fighting back, but that just shifted his anger toward me. And when my mother finally left, I was the one left dealing with him. Now we're all adults in this house. My grandfather technically owns the house, but I pay the bills, keep the place running, and make sure my father doesn't drink himself into a coma. Not that he seems to care. It's not ideal, but it's life. Then, last night happened. It started over something stupid cereal bowls. Yes, you read that right. A grown man lost his mind over a few unwashed bowls. But it wasn't really about the bowls. It never is. He started ranting about the house being a mess, about how no one respects him. The usual garbage. I stayed quiet at first, but he just kept repeating himself. Over and over. Finally, I snapped, "Dad, you're repeating yourself." Big mistake. His face twisted into something I can only describe as pure hatred. He started screaming at me, his voice shaking the walls. Spit flew from his lips as he called me ungrateful, useless, every insult in the book. And then I made the second mistake of the night. I told him maybe it was time to lay off the booze. That's when he lost it completely. He stormed off toward the basement. And that's when the cold realization hit, mirror guns are down there. I froze. He had threatened suicide before, but this felt different, more erratic, more dangerous. I grabbed my phone and hovered over 911, my heart hammering. Then he came back up, but not before making a detour to his bedroom where he kept another gun. I tried to act normal, like I wasn't terrified out of my mind. Then he tried to get into my room. That's where I kept my handgun. I locked the door and backed away, my fingers shaking so badly I could barely hold my phone. I listened as he stomped around, muttering to himself. Then, finally, he settled in the kitchen right next to the gun he kept under his pillow. And then I heard it, the sound I will never forget. The metallic click of a gun being cocked. I ran. I don't even remember moving, I just know I bolted, adrenaline kicking in. My brain screamed that I had to call 911, that this was it. So I did. I told the dispatcher everything as it was happening. My voice was shaking, but I got the words out. The cops arrived in record time, but what happened next? It was like watching a bad movie where you already know the ending and wish you could scream at the characters to do the right thing. They did nothing. My father lied to their faces, telling them it was just a pellet gun, that he never pulled a real weapon, that I was overreacting. And you know what? They believed him. Even when they caught him contradicting himself, even when I told them this wasn't the first time, even when I pleaded with them to do something before it was too late. Nothing. They left, and I was alone with him again. I barely slept that night. Every creak, every movement in the house made my skin crawl. I kept my own gun within arm's reach. But what kind of life is that? Living in fear of the person who is supposed to protect you? I don't know what to do. I feel sick. The system failed me, failed my mother, and will probably fail again when my father finally snaps and someone doesn't get lucky enough to run away in time. So tell me, what am I supposed to do now? Because I'm out of options and I'm out of hope. So my boyfriend, let's call him Jake, has this friend. Let's call her Anna. Years ago, he had a massive crush on her. By his own admission, he thought they were dating, but then she hit him with the classic, "I never saw this as romantic. You're such a great friend." And also dropped the bomb that she had been seeing someone else the entire time. Jake was crushed. He cut off contact for a while, but eventually they started talking again. By the time we got together a year later, he swore to me that any lingering feelings were gone, that I was the one who made him forget all about her, and that now he just saw her as a really good friend. He admitted that it took a while to get to that point, but he assured me he was there. I believed him. Over time, I noticed they still kept in touch. Not constantly, but enough. Maybe once or twice a month, they'd exchange messages or voice notes. She'd send him funny memes, he'd update her on work, stuff like that. Nothing that felt overtly inappropriate, but still enough that I kept my eye on it. We moved in together last year, 4 hours away from where she lives. He doesn't see her often, just maybe 3 or 4 times a year when he's back in town for work, and I've never actually met her. I've met all his other friends, but not Anna. That's always bugged me, though I told myself not to read into it. Then, yesterday, we were sitting on the couch, and I happened to glance at his phone as a message popped up. It was from Anna. It said, "Man, I miss you. It's too bad you're so far away now." My stomach dropped. I pretended I didn't see it, but my mind went into overdrive. How did he feel reading that? Did it stir anything up in him? Does she actually miss him in some casual, friendly way, or is this something more? And why did she feel comfortable saying that? I couldn't hold it in, so I casually asked, "Hey, do you ever miss Anna?" Jake gave me a weird look and shrugged. I mean, sure, she's my friend. I miss all my friends sometimes. Why? Just curious. That was the end of it, but it wasn't the end of my anxiety. So I did something I never thought I'd do. I checked his phone while he was in the shower. I know. I feel awful about it. I'm not the kind of person who does this. But the curiosity was killing me. And that's when I found something that made my blood run cold. It was a voice note from Anna sent a few weeks ago. In it, she said, "You know, I was actually thinking the other day about how different things would have been if I had just given you a chance back then. It's funny how life works, huh? Anyway, I hope you and your girlfriend are doing great." Excuse me? What? So now all these emotions are swirling inside me. Why is she saying this now, years later? Why didn't Jake tell me she said that? Does he still have feelings for her? If she had said this before we got together, would he have waited for her instead? I feel sick. I feel like I'm going crazy. I don't even know if I'm overreacting or if my gut is telling me something real. Do I bring this up? Do I let it go? Do I tell him I checked his phone and prepare for the fallout? What would you do if you were me?